Ladies and gentlemen from all around the world, coming to you from the Spit Studios in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, this is the Spit Sports Show. How did you guys like week 1, eh? Oh my goodness gracious. It felt like an old friend coming back after a few months of not seeing him. You know, he had a really, really good time without you, 3 months of just getting better as a person. And when you hug that person and see him for the first time and you get to interact with one another. Everything just feels right. It feels pure. And that's how I felt yesterday, sitting on my couch for 4 hours straight watching NFL football. I had so much fun. It felt so great to have it back. So I said coming into the weekend that there was one game I really had my eye on and another game I was super interested in, but not as much. But the game that I really, really was interested in watching was Dolphins Chargers. And I expected it to be a whole lot more about the quarterbacks than it was about the coaching, but it turned out to be coaching was the unquestioned parallel between the Chargers and the Dolphins, the unquestioned differentiator. So the Chargers have the most expensive defensive unit in the NFL. Let's get that. I want to put that out right away. Most expensive, and their head coach, Brandon Staley, calls the plays. Dolphins put up 34 points on them. And I want to go through a lot of just straight up coaching errors and ill-faceted decisions that put up a lot of these points for the Dolphins. First of all, end of the half. This is the one that I really want to focus on. So end of the half, Chargers kick a field goal. Dolphins get the ball with 9 seconds left. So the Chargers play prevent defense. Dolphins are on the 25 with man coverage underneath. First of all, that's stupid because they've been cooking you in man coverage all half. I'm going to get to more of that later. But they do it anyways. And the Dolphins get a quick 20-yard completion to Waddle, and they get out of bounds. So that stops the clock for them. And they just got 20 yards, so they're in Hail Mary range. Why are you playing man coverage underneath when you know that they're obviously not going to be able to get in field goal range from 2 throws if you play zone? Just schematically, it makes no sense. But they do it anyways. And Tua throws up a Hail Mary pass into 4 Chargers defenders with 1 receiver there. The pass obviously goes incomplete because it was an impossible throw. But for some reason, J.C. Jackson just shoves the only receiver in the area. I don't know what possessed him. I don't know what was going through his head when he did this. But obviously, some of it has to do with him as a player just not being aware enough. But some of that has to be coaching too, right? Like you have to, get into your players' heads. Hey, in this kind of situation, even before the play, let them know, hey, the last thing we can do right now is take a penalty, get pass interference, because that's a spot foul. Dolphins ended up kicking a 40-yard field goal, and they ended up winning by 2 points. There's your game right there. They gave up 3 points just because of idiotic coaching and dumb football. And this is what the Chargers' issue has been the last few years. This is why I called for Staley's job in the offseason. I have never looked more right about a take. And he just does more every single week to prove why this guy, I'm sure he's very smart, but in terms of being a head coach, he's just over his skis. So Tyreek Hill was obviously the main story of this game. He's unbelievable. He is one of the great receiving talents we've ever seen, right up there with Randy Moss and Calvin Johnson, and these guys who are just straight up freaks of nature. We've seen sprinters, like Olympic sprinters in the NFL before. There was an old Cowboys receiver who was the fastest man in the world. I think his name was Bob something. And there have been other, Darrell Green was super fast. He was an old Redskins cornerback, but we've never seen someone this fast with the football in their hands. Tyreek Hill, when he runs, it looks like he's running against a bunch of like 7th graders. Like there's him, and then underneath that is everybody else. I've never seen someone with that much speed over the middle. And what Mike McDaniels has done so well is obviously someone running a route that fast, the timing is going to be off. So when you run a crosser, for example, you're supposed to meet in the middle usually. So the linebacker has to choose, but it's harder to do that with someone like Tyreek Hill when he's probably going to be in the middle before his other receiver is. So what Mike McDaniels has done so well is change up the timing of the routes, make Tyreek run a lot more double moves and stuff like that so he can slow down a little bit so the timing will be perfect. And he's done that beautifully. Tyreek Hill he caught 150 of his 200 yards in man coverage yesterday. As good as Mike McDaniels is, you can't coach against that much stupidity on the Chargers defense and not put up those kind of stats if you're Tyreek Hill. I don't understand. Whoa. I don't understand how you can. It's like when you're playing against Steph Curry or LeBron and they have 45 by the third quarter. You got to just take the ball out of their hands, right? You got to double team them. You got to say, hey, Austin Reeves, you beat me. Jordan Poole, if you go for 15 this quarter, awesome. But this guy is not beating me. They refuse to do that. On 3rd and goal, 1:45 left. This is the key play of the game. If the Chargers get a stop here, probably going to win. They leave Hill one-on-one with a guy named Michael Davis, former undrafted free agent corner out of BYU. And all Tyreek does is run a little fade route. Unbelievable throw by Tua, drops it right in the breadbasket, and that's pretty much the ball game at this point. Like, I don't think Tua played all that great yesterday. Every single time he made a throw, they were running butt naked wide open, except for that one throw in between two linebackers to that little white receiver, Spano, or I forget his name, but he made a nice throw there. But most of the time, it was just crossers getting wide open against man coverage and him hitting them. Now, he made 2 big-time throws to Tyreek, one up the rail on the right sideline that was just right on the money, and that fade pass. But overall, most of the time, his receivers were getting 3-4 yards of separation. He also had a terrible interception in the red zone when they were down by 1 score, and the game was really in the balance. But even then, when the Chargers pick off this horrible interception where he just completely missed them, threw it way too far to the left, they pick it off easily. Instead of going down in their own end zone and taking it out the 20, they run it out and try to get this extra yards for this huge play, and they ended up going down at the 8. Like another 12-yard loss just from, I think, stupidity. And that starts from the head coach for me. Like the Patriots under Belichick, like you can say what you want about them talent-wise, but they're not making mistakes like that. And the other thing I want to go to is when I said Tua threw that fade for Tyreek for pretty much the game, it ended up being that. But Herbert got the ball with about 2 minutes left and a potential game-winning drive. All he had to do was get in field goal range. They were down by 2. And 3 straight plays, Herbert has no time to throw because the defender is unblocked running towards him with a blitz. I'm sorry. I don't know who to really blame that on. Is it Herbert for not IDing the right mic? Is it Kellen Moore for not designing the right blocking scheme? I don't know, but the fact that they just weren't prepared for it, again, I can't blame this on Kellen Moore because he's a defensive coach, but it's a coaching issue. The Chargers are too talented to have these kind of games just constantly happening to them. So many mental errors, so many coaching mistakes. I thought Herbert played ridiculously well yesterday. That one up the left side to Allen, right underneath the safety and above the corner. That other throw on 3rd down to Allen where he was in between 2 linebackers. There was about this much window there, and he just fired it in as only he can. I thought he played really well, and I thought the Chargers' run game looks better than it ever has under Joe Lombardi, and I'm excited that that's happening because I think that's going to take a lot of pressure off Herbert in the long term. But for yesterday, man, there were a lot of issues on the Chargers side. Props to the Dolphins. They've obviously found their quarterback head coach combo, and they have one of the most special wide receivers in the history of the world. But the Chargers, it's time to make a change of head coach. I'm calling for his job again. Staley is not the guy to take the Chargers to the Super Bowl where they should be with the talent that they have. Like most expensive defensive unit in the NFL, he calls the plays, and they're bottom 10 every year in defense. You do the math for me. The other game I want to talk about because I live in Vancouver is Seahawks-Rams. Obviously, Seahawks are kind of the team around here. I never really gravitated towards them. They're okay, but I've always been a Lions guy. That was an embarrassing performance. Favored by 5.5 at home in the loudest stadium in the world. So you know it's bad when Tutu Atwell, who around the NFL GMs and scouts had unanimously agreed was a bust. He went for 119 against their young and new secondary, who everyone is in this city has been telling me is going to be top 5. Stafford looked so comfortable the entire day. They had no pass rush with 4. And even when they blitzed, Stafford would have 2-3 seconds to just pick them apart. It was Brady-esque the way he was getting the ball out yesterday. He wasn't doing too much, just getting the ball and 1, 2 balls out on a slant or a little drag route. Like, the linebackers were so terrible at covering the middle of the field yesterday for Seattle. And that's a problem. I think it's about time we start looking at Geno as what he actually is. So I want to give you a couple stats and facts about Geno. So first of all, he looked shook yesterday against a defense that's practically Aaron Donald and friends. He looked like he'd never seen anything like it before. He was holding the ball for too long. When he did finally get to release some of these intermediate passes, they were always just a hair behind or outside where they had to make fingertip grabs, which they did every now and then. But most of the time, he just looked off. So I want to just point this out. Since week 10 last year, Geno is 3-6 with an average passer rating of 80. That's not very good. And yesterday, he had way better weapons than Stafford did. It wasn't even close. I think the Seahawks' third best weapon was better than the first best weapon the Rams had. I'll take Jackson Smith and Jigba over Tutu Atwell any day of the week. But didn't matter because, first of all, he didn't have a bunch of time. And when he did have time, he was so shook from the times that he didn't have time that he thought he had less time. And everything just collapsed for the Seahawks yesterday, which is so disappointing for a team who a lot of folks had proving a lot of people wrong, making a big playoff run this year, saying, they played a lot of young guys last year. They're going to take another step this year. This was not a good first step for them against the Rams. Do I think the Rams are going to be good this year? I don't. I really don't. So it's not even like I can come up here and say, oh, yeah, the Rams are like a sleeper team this year, under Stafford and McVay. I don't think they are. I think the Seahawks just crapped the bed, came out flat, and Geno might be turning back into a pumpkin. So before I go, I'm going to talk about Bills-Jets tonight because this is, I think, the perfect matchup they could have scheduled for Monday night because I am so fascinated to see what both of these teams look like this year. I think the Bills are going to take a big step back. I don't think the Jets are even going to make the playoffs this year, but everyone thinks that they're Super Bowl contenders. I'm fascinated by this matchup, and you better believe I'm going to be watching every single snap. So my take for this game is I think everything is lining up perfectly for Rodgers to have a monster game tonight. So he's obviously back in the system that he won 2 MVPs in under Kellen Moore, or not Kellen Moore. I've been talking about the Chargers too much. Under Nathaniel Hackett, and going up against a Bills secondary that I think outside of Tre'Davious White is average at best. They have a lot of guys, but not a lot of big playmakers on that side of the ball. And I think Garrett Wilson is going to have a huge game because this offense in particular is really, really great at getting the number one option open. Devontae Adams was unquestionably the best receiver in the world while in the system. I think he still is, but that's a whole nother discussion. I'll save that for another day. But this game is really going to come down to the Jets O-line. Like I said, I don't think the Bills are going to be able to cover the Jets in the secondary, especially with Wilson in this new West Coast system. But I think the Jets O-line has been what's made me apprehensive about them since Rodgers got there. I think it's shaky, especially at the tackle position, which is probably going to be the most important against this Bills team, who McDermott lives from his outside pass rush and corner blitzes. So if they can hold up, the Jets probably win. If they can't, I think the Bills probably take the game. I'm going to pick the Bills in this game. I'm going to say they win I'm going to say they win 28-24, but I think Rodgers has a solid first performance, and I think Wilson goes for at least over 90 yards in this game. So if you have that player prop online, I'm stacking Rodgers and Wilson for both of their overs in a parlay. So thank you guys as always for listening. What did you guys think of week 1? Who was your big surprise? Who's the team that disappointed you the most, that you had expectations for? Let me know. As always, the Spit Show comes out every other day. I'll probably have another episode out tomorrow talking about Bills Jets, depending on how it goes. Thank you guys, as always, for listening. I really, really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.